The word faith has become rather misused and twisted. The word faith today is what you try to use when reasons are stacking up against what you think you ought to believe. Here's what one commentator said. Faith is, quote, religious wishful thinking in which one squeezes out spiritual hope in intense acts of sheer will. People of faith, this commentator said, believe the impossible. People of faith believe that which is contrary to fact. People of faith believe that which is contrary to evidence. People of faith, said this commentator, ignore reality. In other words, faith is cuckoo land. And all of that shouldn't surprise us, that people then raise their eyebrows when Christians say they believe they have faith in Jesus Christ. After all, it's not strange to prefer what seems reasonable over what seems insanity. But, and here's the but, the Bible never talks about faith in that way. It never speaks about a blind faith. Rather, the Bible always insists on a reasoned, logical faith built on firm foundations of fact and information. Christians, like me, who take the Bible seriously, we're necessarily humble in our commitment to the truth of the Bible. We believe it's God's word to us, but we are convinced that the Bible has understandable, trustworthy, and intelligent answers to even these most difficult questions about faith. There are cogent answers to these sorts of questions. Now, when it comes to faith, I guess we could say that by and large we are the whatever generation. That is, most people just simply shrug their shoulders and say, whatever. After all, there is such a cacophony of competing claims, isn't there? There's such a vast array of spiritual options. Seems the easiest thing to do then, take the pluralist approach, say all religions are basically the same and it doesn't matter what you choose. Whatever is what most people say. I can vividly, we've been talking about our 14-year-olds. I can vividly remember becoming a father for the first time. And it wasn't so much the shock about being presented with this amazing little bundle who's now almost as tall as me and as ugly as well, poor chap. So there's this little helpless bundle, but it was a sudden awakening to a whole new world that previously I'd been blissfully ignorant of. So for example, nappies. Now, I don't mean how to change them. I have done that occasionally. Very occasionally. Now, what I mean is the shock of what's out there. So that amazing choice. Because there are reusables, there are disposables, there are reusables that are basically bits of towel, those are the terries. And there are reusables with cotton wobs, those are the pre-folds. And you can wash them yourself or you can use a nappy service. And then there are the disposables, and then there are the different makes. There's the Pampers and the Huggies and the own brands. And then there are the different claims and the different ways of keeping baby dry, and the different sizes, and the different ways of fastening. And if you go to Sainsbury's or Morrison's, you'll see what I mean. There is a whole aisle of nappies to choose from, isn't there? And if you haven't got kids, or you're past that stage, you probably haven't noticed that aisle. You've probably walked by it and ignored it, just as I used to. And it's just the same with the cereal aisle, isn't it? There's bran flakes, and there's corn flakes, and there's Rice Krispies, and there's Weetabix, and there's shredded wheat, and my favourite, the Harvest Crunch. And the choice is almost endless. And what you've got is a whole aisle to choose from. And cereals and nappies, it's basically the same, particularly with some of the cereals. They all do basically the same job, don't they? So you can choose whatever you like for whatever reason you like. You can have your choice, I'll have my choice. You can try and persuade me that yours is better, but at the end of the day, it's not a right-wrong thing, it's just a matter of preference. Well, is it the same with all the different faiths that are out there? There's a guy called Steve Turner. He wrote a tongue-in-cheek poem trying to capture this supermarket view of faith. It's called creed. It goes like this. We believe that all religions are basically the same. At least the one we read was. They all believe in love and goodness. They only differ on matters of creation, sin, hell, heaven, God, and salvation. We believe that each man must find the truth that's right for him. Reality will adapt accordingly. The universe will readjust. History will alter. We believe there's no absolute truth, except the absolute truth that there is no absolute truth. Now, when you're faced with that sort of cynicism and all that choice, well, perhaps it is easier just to say whatever and to walk on by, to ignore the aisle. An Australian author, historian, a chap called John Dixon, he says this. He calls it the spirituality of distraction. It's not that we don't think about the bigger questions of life. It's just that we find the distraction of lesser things, you know, the kids' education or the new boat or the frustration about bureaucracy or your tax accounts, end of the year coming. All of that's easier to deal with, isn't it? And so we say whatever to the bigger questions. They're there, we just ignore them because we don't think they're relevant. However, the problem is they're not so easily dismissed, are they? There was a famous philosopher, Blaise Pascal. He was a big thinker in the 17th century. He wrote a book called The Pensée, and he writes a story about people in a dungeon just simply waiting for execution. And he says that's the view of the universe that someone without faith essentially has. We're just waiting for final oblivion. And if that is the case, well, then surely eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we die. Well, that's the appropriate behavior, isn't it? If finally that's all that there is, well, then faith is irrelevant.